At body size this small, heat should accumulate faster than it can be released, dehydration should accelerate past recovery, and neural performance should decay long before nightfall ends. The margin between function and shutdown is supposed to be wider than this. And yet, it holds. The organism remains operational, alert, precise when the numbers say it should already be failing. The animal is the sand cat. This is a mammal weighing barely more than a bottle of water, operating in a desert that swings from daytime heat to nighttime cold fast enough to crack stone, in an ecosystem where free water is functionally absent, and where every calorie burned without return pushes the system closer to irreversible loss. In mammals of this size, surface area works against survival. Heat is lost too fast at night, gained too fast by day. Water evaporates with every breath, and high metabolic rates amplify every mistake. Biology normally solves this by retreat, torpor, or strict activity windows. The sand cat does none of these cleanly. It hunts actively in open desert, often far from cover, and does so with a metabolic pace that leaves no room for inefficiency. The paradox is not that it survives heat, but that it avoids overheating without access to shade, while also preventing hypothermia hours later when temperatures collapse. Its physiology walks a line where blood flow, respiration, and activity level are constantly adjusted, not to optimize performance, but to avoid crossing failure thresholds. The kidneys concentrate urine to extremes seen in few mammals, minimizing water loss to levels that approach theoretical limits, while moisture is scavenged almost entirely from prey tissue, turning hunting success into hydration events. This creates a dependency loop where missing meals is not just energy loss, but water loss, compounding risk with time. The ears, oversized relative to the skull, are not aesthetic. They are heat exchangers and sensors, thin membranes radiating excess heat, while simultaneously sampling a soundscape that dictates whether movement is worth the cost. Even so, the system is fragile. A prolonged heat wave, a sequence of failed hunts, or minor injury would cascade quickly. There is no buffer, no stored surplus waiting to absorb error. Evolution has not made the sand cat tough in the way large predators are tough. It has made it precise. The horror is not in what it does, but in how close it operates to collapse at all times. This is a body engineered to function in an environment that strips away safety margins, where survival is not about dominance, but about never letting the internal math drift out of bounds. In the desert, nothing intervenes when a system fails. Physics does not negotiate. The sand cat persists anyway, not because the rules bend, but because it obeys them so narrowly that failure is always one small miscalculation away. Low-frequency sound is supposed to belong to large bodies. It requires space, mass, and long internal pathways for vibration to remain intact, long enough to be interpreted. In small skulls, those wavelengths are expected to decay into noise before meaning forms. The limit is architectural, not behavioral. And yet, something listens where listening should be useless. The sand cat's skull houses an auditory system tuned to frequencies so low they normally slip under the resolution of animals this size. In open desert, wind shears sound apart, sand absorbs vibration, and thermal gradients bend acoustic paths unpredictably. Under these conditions, most predators rely on vision or proximity. The sand cat does neither reliably. Instead, it extracts information from pressure waves traveling through loose sand, detecting the faint movements of rodents beneath the surface. This creates a sensory paradox. Sand is an acoustic filter, a medium designed by physics to erase detail, yet the sand cat recovers enough signal to act with lethal precision. The constraint is not just sensitivity, but noise management. Every gust of wind, every shifting grain, every movement of the cat itself generates interference. The auditory cortex must separate meaningful patterns from constant distortion in real time without the luxury of repeated sampling. There is no pause button in a hunt. The oversized pinnae amplify ground-level vibrations, while the inner ear tolerates levels of mechanical stress that would degrade signal clarity in less specialized mammals. But amplification alone is dangerous. Too much gain increases false positives, wasting energy on phantom prey. Too little, and the hunt never begins. The system operates at a narrow gain window, a biological equalizer set by evolution that assumes desert conditions remain statistically predictable. When the cat freezes, lowering its body and pressing its ears toward the ground, it is not stalking. It is stabilizing a sensor array, reducing self-generated noise to prevent sensory overload. This behavior costs time and exposes the animal, but without it, the auditory data collapses into useless static. The unsettling reality is that this hearing does not make the sandcat powerful, it makes it dependent. A slight change in substrate moisture, a different sand composition, or sustained wind alters transmission enough to break the system's assumptions. There is no redundancy. Vision cannot easily replace it at night, smell diffuses too slowly, and touch comes too late. The sandcat hunts in a world where information barely exists, pulling order from a signal that physics is actively trying to destroy. That it works at all feels like an error, not because it violates biology, but because it functions at the edge of what matter will allow. Venom is designed to forgive no mistakes. It exists to turn a single breach into systemic failure, to end a fight before it begins. For most mammals without biochemical resistance, contact is a countdown. There is no partial tolerance, no gradual adaptation. Either the toxin is neutralized or the system collapses. And yet, there is a predator that engages venomous snakes without possessing true venom immunity and survives by refusing error altogether. The sandcat does not withstand venom. It avoids it. This distinction is critical and deeply unsettling. Evolution has not given it molecular defenses against neurotoxins or hemotoxins. Its blood does not deactivate venom. Its tissues are not protected from binding. A successful bite would proceed exactly as physics and chemistry intend. Failure would be rapid and irreversible. The only solution available is behavioral and neurological, operating on timescales measured in milliseconds. When confronting venomous snakes, including species capable of delivering medically significant venom, the sandcat relies on extreme reaction speed, precise targeting, and attack angles that minimize exposure. The strike is directed at the head, the control center of the venom delivery system, not out of aggression, but necessity. There is no tolerance for prolonged struggle. Proximity is minimized, timing is compressed, and the engagement is ended before the snake's sensory motor loop can complete a bite sequence. This is not dominance, it is a race against synaptic delay. Snake venom systems evolved to exploit hesitation, to punish contact, to end encounters quickly. The sandcat counters not by being tougher, but by being faster than the window in which venom becomes relevant. The margin is so thin that environmental noise, fatigue, or misjudgment could erase it. Unlike animals with partial resistance, there is no second chance, no gradual poisoning that allows retreat. The strategy assumes perfect execution under variable conditions, every time. What makes this worse is that the behavior is not optional. In desert ecosystems, snakes represent both a risk and a resource. Ignoring them limits available prey. Engaging them risks instant failure. The sandcat chooses engagement not because it is safe, but because energy economics demand it. Hunger narrows acceptable risk. This turns predation into a calculation where the cost of inaction rivals the cost of death. Watching this through the lens of biology reveals the horror. The cat is not protected. It is exposed, constantly, relying on a nervous system calibrated to act before consequences exist. One delayed signal, one misaligned strike, and the laws governing venom take over without emotion. The sandcat survives not by breaking those laws, but by living in the brief moment before they apply. Energy budgets in small carnivores are supposed to include error margins. Missed hunts, bad weather, injury, these are expected inputs, and metabolism usually leaves space to absorb them. In the desert, that assumption fails. For the sandcat, the numbers never relax. Every movement burns fuel at a rate that reflects its small size and high surface area to volume ratio, and every pause risks thermal loss or gain that must be corrected metabolically. The paradox is not that it hunts often, but that it can afford to hunt at all in a landscape where prey density is low and uneven. Each hunting attempt carries a measurable energetic cost, and failure does not merely delay success, it compounds deficit. Unlike larger predators that can fast for days without structural damage, the sandcat's physiology begins negotiating with limits almost immediately. Glycogen reserves are shallow, fat stores are modest, and prolonged negative balance pushes muscle catabolism into play faster than is considered safe in most mammals. This creates a system where time itself becomes an adversary. The longer the interval between successful kills, the more expensive each subsequent attempt becomes, because the body's efficiency degrades under deficit. Muscles lose power, reaction times lengthen, thermoregulation becomes sloppier. The animal is aware of none of this consciously, yet its behavior reflects the pressure. Movement is economical, routes are reused, and hunts are initiated only when sensory confidence crosses a threshold that justifies the energy risk. This is not caution, it is accounting. Prey choices reflect this knife-edge logic. Small rodents provide limited calories, but they also minimize chase time and injury risk. Larger prey would offer better returns, but introduce variables that could extend pursuit or cause harm, both unacceptable under tight margins. Even digestion plays a role. Rapid assimilation allows nutrients and water to be converted into usable currency quickly, shortening the window where the body is operating on debt. The unsettling aspect is how little slack exists. A string of poor nights can cascade into systemic failure without any single dramatic event. There is no moment where the animal clearly starves. Instead, performance decays until the environment simply stops responding. No intervention arrives. The desert does not compensate for bad luck. The sandcat's survival strategy is not built around abundance, but around never overspending. It lives in a state where equilibrium is temporary, constantly re-earned, and always one miscalculation away from collapse. Loose sand is a hostile surface for locomotion. It collapses under load, dissipates force, and converts forward motion into wasted energy. Mechanical systems fail on it routinely, traction is unpredictable, and precision degrades with every step. For small mammals, this is compounded by low mass, where insufficient downward force prevents stable contact. Movement should be slow, noisy, and inefficient, and yet the sandcat moves across dunes as if the surface were cooperating. The paradox lies in how its body interfaces with a medium that refuses structure. Broad, fur-covered paws increase surface area, distributing weight to reduce sinkage, while dense hair between the toes insulates against both heat transfer and abrasive particles. This design does not create grip in the traditional sense. It minimizes loss. Each step is engineered to avoid triggering the sand's tendency to flow, turning locomotion into a controlled negotiation rather than a forceful push. Joint angles and limb posture further reduce vertical displacement, keeping the center of mass low and stable, preventing energy from being wasted on constant correction. The result is movement that appears effortless but is actually finely constrained. Any deviation in speed, load, or angle increases collapse, noise, and metabolic cost. Silence is a side effect, not a goal. Sand normally broadcasts movement, grains colliding and sliding audibly, but the sandcat's gait limits these micro-failures, suppressing acoustic signatures that would alert prey or predators. This precision comes with a cost. The system is tuned for a narrow range of conditions. Wet sand, crusted surfaces, or rocky substrates reduce its advantages, forcing adjustments that increase energy expenditure and injury risk. There is no universal solution embedded here, only optimization for a specific failure mode. The unsettling truth is that this locomotion does not make the sandcat fast or powerful. It makes it just efficient enough. Every stride assumes the sand will behave within expected parameters. When it does not, the body must compensate immediately or bleed energy it cannot spare. Unlike larger animals that can muscle through resistance, the sandcat lacks the mass to overpower the environment. It survives by never asking the ground to support more than it is willing to give. In a landscape that erodes stability by default, the sandcat's movement is a continuous act of restraint, a system designed not to dominate its substrate, but to avoid provoking it into failure. Most organisms survive by building buffers. Extra fat, redundant organs, flexible behaviors, margins that absorb randomness. Over evolutionary time, these buffers are what turn rare failure into manageable risk. The sandcat has almost none. Its survival strategy is not layered or forgiving. It is narrow, specialized, and intolerant of deviation. Every system discussed so far, thermoregulation, hearing, predation, energy balance, locomotion, operates close to a boundary condition where performance degrades sharply once crossed. There is no graceful decline. The paradox is not that the sandcat survives the desert, but that it does so repeatedly, across generations, without ever widening those margins. Longevity is achieved not by reducing risk, but by avoiding accumulation. Each night resets the equation, but never improves it. Injuries do not heal quickly in a water-limited environment. Sensory degradation directly reduces hunting success. Aging tightens thresholds further. Evolution has accepted this, not corrected it. The species persists because individuals that drift even slightly outside optimal parameters are removed silently, without spectacle. What remains is a population constantly pruned down to those capable of operating within extreme tolerances. This creates an illusion of toughness. Observers see a predator that kills venomous snakes, hunts in open desert, and endures thermal extremes, and interpret resilience. In reality, it is fragility managed with precision. The system works only as long as external conditions remain statistically familiar. Rapid environmental change, temperature shifts, altered prey distributions, human disturbance, these do not need to be catastrophic to be fatal. They only need to nudge variables outside the narrow band where the math balances. There is no adaptation buffer waiting to deploy. The sandcat does not dominate its environment. It aligns with it temporarily, perfectly enough to persist. This is why it feels wrong. Biology usually trades specialization for vulnerability over long timescales. Here, vulnerability is constant, and survival emerges anyway. Not because the rules are bent, but because they are followed so strictly that any deviation becomes terminal. The sandcat is not a desert tyrant. It is a system running without safety margins, sustained by accuracy alone, in a world that does not care whether it succeeds or fails.